We know that climate change is human-caused. We also know that there is a link between climate change and extreme weather patterns and natural disasters such as heat waves, bushfires, floods, and storms and tornadoes, but not earthquakes. Now, if climate change is human-caused and if it contributes to natural disasters, the question arises: to what extent are these extreme weather patterns and natural disasters still natural, right? And to what extent are they caused by or contributed to by humans, right? Am I not responsible if these things are now aggravated by climate change, which is caused by humans? Well, for the past 400 years, there has been this division between humans on the one hand and nature on the other hand. And prior to that, from about 1600s, before 1600s, it was a subject of theology, religion, and mysticism, right? But for the past 400 years, and that's the evolution we're going to look at in this video, for the past 400 years, there has been this division. So if there was a natural disaster, such as a storm or flood or fire, right, something caused by nature, it impacted me, one innocent human here. I was simply impacted by this overwhelming, overpowering nature, right? And I couldn't do anything, and I was in no way implicated in that event, apart from just being a victim of it, right? That has been the case. But now, because we know that we are partly responsible for these things, that's what's happening here, right? Does that mean that this division, right, this dualism between humans and nature, through that recognition of these natural disasters, right, does that mean that that boundary, that wall dividing us is now breaking, right? And does that mean that we are now recognizing that we are actually part of nature? That's what we're going to explain in this video. Hi, I am Jan from sustainablebutterflies.com.au, and on the screen you see my 5 pillars of sustainability. Remember the last time there was a natural disaster in your country or somewhere else in the world? When you heard about that on TV, or when you read about it in a paper or online or on the radio, however you consume information, when you heard that story, was it only about that natural disaster, such as massive floods in Pakistan last year, or massive heat waves in Europe, or here in Australia we had 2 huge floods? When you heard that, was it only about that disaster, or was climate change also mentioned in that news coverage, right? Well, I don't know about you, but I have been noticing that when such a disaster happens, that climate change is more and more entering that news coverage of the disaster. Not immediately. Firstly, they tell you the number of casualties, how many people were displaced, what is the economic loss, what the government is doing, what is the insurance doing, how long it's gonna take to fix it, the roads and rebuild the houses, etc. They tell you all of this stuff, but oftentimes I have been noticing that they talk about climate change, such as why is this massive flood happening for the third time this year, or it's the hottest year on record, or things like, well, you would hear from some senior official, maybe a fire commissioner, 40 years of service, saying, oh, I've never seen such a flood happening here, this is terrible. And then sometimes they talk about the rising greenhouse gas emissions and what your country is doing to reduce that, right? Anyway, so that's one thing I want to mention. The second thing I want to mention is you might have also heard about the term called the Anthropocene. I will read the official definition of the Anthropocene is this. The term Anthropocene is a period of time during which human activities have impacted the environment enough to constitute a distinct geological change. There is a new subcategory of climate science called attribution science. And attribution science, as the name suggests, studies what is the link between these extreme weather patterns and climate change, right? Is it 2% or 40% or 60%, right? To what extent can these floods and bushfires and heat waves and storms be attributed to human-caused climate change? We don't have that exact visibility yet, right? Because it's a new science, but as the time progresses and as the science advances, we're going to get better understanding of exactly how this works, right? Now, these three things, attribution science, the Anthropocene, and the fact that natural disasters and climate change are that news coverage is done by the media, right? It's done together, and scientists, right, and academia, right? That people are getting that understanding, like through their phones, all over the world, right? These three things are telling me that that artificial wall that was built about 400 years ago between these humans and nature on one hand, on two separate poles, right? That artificial wall is no longer tenable in 2023, and that we need to break it down, right? Like a Berlin Wall kind of thing, right? Now, before we do that though, we need to understand why is this division, why was that division even created? And to do that, we need to flash back to about 400 years ago. So let's do that briefly. We can trace this separation to René Descartes, who was a French mathematician and philosopher. And he came up with this system called Cartesian dualism, René Descartes, Cartesian dualism, where you separate everything, two entities. He started with the body, but then from that, you separate all the other things. I'll explain how it works, but just one thing. He wasn't the only one thinking this way. There was Galileo Galilei, and all of these were his contemporaries, Galilei, Isaac Newton, and Thomas Hobbes, English philosopher, who were the Enlightenment thinkers who kind of didn't like the metaphysics and mysticism and really religion even, but they couldn't say it, otherwise they would have been executed. Back then, we're talking 400 years ago. They didn't like faith and absolutist monarchy even as much, right? They like reason, science, state, democracy, republic, right? These things, and logic and mechanism and machines and sequence and the different thinking, right? Now Descartes, however, was the one who came up with this dualism. So what he did is he was a mathematician who wanted to have absolute proof for human existence and for how the world works, right? He was looking for mathematical and logical proof for everything. He didn't want any ambiguity. He wanted absolute certainty and clear and distinct ideas. But he had no way of proving his theories, right? Because he was looking for like a formula, logical proof for, you know, I'm thinking about this, like the world, how the world works, but how do I prove it? Until one day, he was hesitating and worried and, you know, I'm doubting. And he was like, shit, you know, how can I prove my theories? And then he realized, no matter what is going on in the world, I could be hallucinating, I could be sick, I could be possessed by some evil spirits or whatever. There is one thing I can be absolutely certain of, and that is that right this moment I am doubting. I am looking around and I'm questioning the world. Am I right or not? You know, is this logical or not? And that faculty of questioning, of doubting, started his whole philosophical system that we've been running on for 400 years. And that is his famous I think therefore I am, cogito ergo sum, right? It started with I doubt therefore I am, but doubting is a way of thinking. Now, if he reasoned this way, if the only thing I can be certain of is that I think, right, and I can doubt other things, therefore that is the thing that that is like a total pillar for everything else. And that put the primacy of human individual's ability to think at the forefront, right? It was for him the proof of human mind. Before it was God or some system of gods or some spirits, right, or whatever, metaphysics. But now for Descartes, it was me thinking. And if I am thinking, right, and that's the top thing on the pedestal, I can then create separation from everything else. Resources, plants, animals, food, other people, other countries, whatever, even my own body. For Descartes, even his own body was separated from him thinking, because for him, human mind was following different laws from body, including brain. They were kind of like a mechanistic, the body including brain, and then in it was this kind of like a ghost-like thinking thing, and this one individual was this coexistence of these two, this body and mind. That's why it's called dualism, mind and body dualism or Cartesian dualism. But that dualism, right, that gave a platform for treating everything else as an object, right? I am subject and the other things are objects. And I can, and that gave the distance. Unlike, obviously, indigenous cultures, where everything is together, right? Now, this was complete opposite of this, right? I can examine things, I can run experiments, I can exploit it, I can explore it, I can study it, I can dissect it, cut it down into 1,000 pieces and then reassemble it. And it fitted the times, right? Of Newton, obviously, of Galileo Galilei, of Thomas Hobbes and other Enlightenment thinkers, right? And that was the key kind of contributing force for building this division, this dualistic division where I am here, right? And then nature is that. It's just some kind of thing that I take from or I exploit, and sometimes I am, there is floods, but I'm in no way influencing it in any way. But now, after 400 years, with our understanding of our role in climate change and how it works together, it's a dynamic system and we're definitely involved. We know that beyond any doubt, almost like Descartes, if we want proof, we have it now, right? So what we're doing, we're reversing it, and instead of now trying to be, worshipping indigenous cultures and thinking, we have to be all tree huggers and be greenies. No, we don't need to do any of that bullshit. We can just simply recognize logically and by reason that, okay, well, we had this dualism, right? And it helped in many ways, like it allows us, if we have the distance, we can run experiment and advance science, which is beneficial, but it harmed us in a certain way. But now we can use it and think, okay, so beyond any doubt, I am definitely influencing what's going on in the world, including the so-called natural disasters. And, and therefore, I probably should be thinking about, what I eat, who I vote, do I drive or not drive, do I fly or don't fly, or how often and where, what do I buy, like these kind of things. And I kind of like this approach because it strips everything down to basics, and you don't need to engage in any preaching or any, proselytizing and that sort of stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to share this with you, and I hope you got some value and you have a great day. Bye.